In our culture, we tend to live our lives by checking things off boxes that either we made or society has made for us. There's big picture stuff. We go to school, go to college or learn a trade, get a job, start a family. And there's everyday things too. We pay the bills, answer emails, get the kids to where they need to go. Check, check, check. But when we're done ticking those boxes, that's where a lot of us struggle. We have every intention of keeping the focus that we had while we were doing that task, but a lot of times we hit our goals and just kind of drift. And we tend to do the same thing spiritually. For example, yesterday we celebrated confirmation. Now, there are tons of studies out there that suggest that the majority of teens tend to stray away from the faith to the point that 4 out of 10 that do never come back. In other words, for too many, confirmation has become less a sacrament of mission and more of a sacrament of departure. And think about our other sacraments: Eucharist, confession, marriage, holy orders. We check those boxes to get to that sacrament, then life returns to normal. But the church doesn't want us to stay at normal. It never wants us to be finished. While the sacrament of confirmation completes initiation into the church, our other sacraments are kind of a initiation as well. But initiation into what? Well, into a life of constant renewal, a life of constantly seeking God in our lives. We see this first in today's reading from Acts, where Luke tells us how to do this in both the first and the last lines. So let's start with the first. They devoted themselves to the teachings of the apostles. Devoted. Every day. Not just Christmas and Easter or other milestones. Then everything that was written after that reveals what devotion looks like in flesh and blood. Shared life, Eucharist, prayer, teaching. Because one of the most subtle traps that we fall into is what I'd like to call spirituality of arrival. We reach a sacrament or a position in the church, maybe a level of comfort, and something inside us says, I've made it. Mass can then become an obligation, not hunger. Readings and homilies just kind of fade into background noise. We check that box week after week, but our hearts are elsewhere. This temptation can be even stronger for those in ministry. Readers, Eucharistic ministers, catechists, deacons. The closer you get to the sacred, the more you risk becoming professionals in holy things. We manage the mystery instead of being moved by it. We handle the Eucharist with reverence, but not astonishment. We proclaim Scripture, but no longer tremble before its truth. Now the saints, they warn that familiarity builds a transparent wall between us and God, so thin that we hardly know it's there, but yet it keeps our souls untouched. Then the gospel, it gives us Thomas. Now, one of my biggest pet peeves is this doubting Thomas label. Because if you read earlier in John's gospel, when Jesus decides to return back to those that wanted to stone him, it's Thomas who says, "Let us also go, that we may die with him." And to me, that's not the line of a skeptic. That's devotion. So when Thomas refuses to accept the resurrection secondhand, I don't see stubbornness. I see a man who takes truth seriously. He knows what crucifixion looks like. He can't imagine life coming through that death until life itself comes right through the door at him. And notice, Jesus doesn't rebuke him. He returns a second time through locked doors for the one who needed more. Now that is the definition of what this Divine Mercy Sunday stands for. Not a God that's disappointed in our struggles, but a God who keeps coming back for those that are looking for him. We see in many places that the early Christians were not polished saints. Yet, it was this fragile group that became the foundation of our church. Their holiness was not imperfection, but perseverance. They kept returning to prayer, to table, to community, and Christ kept meeting them there. The church has always been a people needing saved, not one that's already complete. Whenever any of us, be it confirmed teenagers, seasoned ministers, lifelong parishioners, think that formation is behind us, we stop moving towards the one who's constantly moving towards us. Now, it brings me back to that last line of our first reading. Every day the Lord added to their number. Because every day they devoted themselves. Not because they were extraordinary, but because they kept showing up. Thomas was saved by staying honest, present, open. The Lord came back for him. And he comes back for us every time that we approach this table, not from duty, but from hunger and hope. That is what devotion means. That is what our confirmation and the other sacraments invites. Not a finish line, but a fresh beginning. And that grace, alive and burning, is offered to us again, this and every morning.